With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Hey, this is James O'Neill. Britain has reportedly contacted Australia and Canada about a coordinated response that could include banning Elon Musk's X platform over concerns about Grok generating deepfake sexual images. Prime Minister Keir Starmer said all options were on the table under the Online Safety Act, which allows major fines or bans. Australia's leader criticized X's practices, while Canada denied considering a ban. Musk accused the UK government of censorship. Any ban could strain relations with Washington, where the Trump administration has opposed European censorship and warned of possible sanctions if X is blocked. The British government plans to provide taxpayer-funded mental health therapists for alleged asylum seekers housed at Cameron Barracks in Inverness, Scotland. Around 300 male migrants will be accommodated there as the Home Office moves away from low hotel use. Officials said on-site primary and mental health care, funded by the Home Office, would reduce pressure on local NHS services. Critics argue the plan gives preferential treatment, noting local residents often wait months for NHS therapy. Along with therapy, migrants will receive free housing, meals, health care, dental care, and pocket money. The cost of the asylum system reached £5.4 billion in 2023-24. The European Union is reportedly pressing Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government to include a financial penalty in a proposed Brexit reset if a future UK government withdraws. The provision, dubbed a Farage Clause, is intended to deter exit by a potential Reform UK government led by Nigel Farage. Critics say it undermines parliamentary sovereignty by binding future governments. Farage and Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch have pledged to scrap the deal if elected. Labour says termination clauses are standard in international agreements and would apply to both sides. A senior Danish lawmaker said Russia and China pose no threat to Greenland, rejecting President Trump's argument for U.S. control of the Arctic island. Rasmus Jarlov, chair of Denmark's Parliamentary Defense Committee, said claims of looming danger from Moscow or Beijing were delusional and accused proponents of exaggerating risks. President Trump has not ruled out using force to acquire Greenland, prompting tensions with European NATO allies backing Danish sovereignty. Russia and China have denied hostile intentions, and polling suggests Greenlanders have little interest in joining the United States. President Trump said Cuba will no longer receive Venezuelan oil or money, urging Havana to strike a deal with Washington before it's too late. Venezuelan crude shipments to Cuba have stopped since a U.S.-led blockade following the capture of President Nicolas Maduro.
One of the groups I want taken care of are the people that came from Cuba that were forced out or left under duress, and they're great citizens of the United States right now. You have a lot of people forced out of Cuba unfairly, so we're going to take care, most importantly right now, we're going to take care of the people that came from Cuba that are American citizens or in our country.
President Trump said Sunday he plans to speak with Elon Musk about restoring internet access in Iran, where authorities have imposed a 4-day blackout amid nationwide protests. President Trump said Musk's company SpaceX, which operates the Starlink network, could help reconnect Iranians. Information flows have been curtailed since Thursday as protests, the largest since 2022, continue. Musk has previously backed providing Starlink to Iran during unrest. Rights groups report hundreds killed and more than 10,000 arrests, figures Iran has not confirmed. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch vowed her party would impose a nationwide ban on social media for under 16s if returned to power.
Parties like Reform seem to want. What we want is common sense, and we know that this can be done. There are ways, new technologies that didn't exist a few years ago for verifying users, and then this firmly puts the responsibility with parents when there is a legal limit in place that stops children being in spaces that are for adults.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
There is a problem with medicine, and we can explain what it is by looking back to the discovery of penicillin. Penicillin, it turns out, was not just an accidental finding. Alexander Fleming discovered that mold he found in a culture dish was killing bacteria, but it took over 10 years before a team at Oxford University were able to isolate the active ingredient. They produced small quantities for preclinical and clinical trials, helping prove the compound was safe and could beat infection. However, they couldn't produce it at scale. In 1941, Andrew Jackson Moyer of the US Department of Agriculture, the forerunner to the FDA, suggested changes to the manufacturing process, enabling mass production. It turns out medicines are not invented when someone discovers a new molecular entity. They are the product of key stakeholders working together collaboratively. Until medicine can be manufactured at scale, it may as well not exist. And in 2025, this is a problem. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical companies began outsourcing production. Suddenly the system was significantly less integrated. Someone with a new discovery today will find themselves disconnected from the rest of the development and manufacturing process. Companies that develop medicine are still happy to work with big established pharma companies, but the modern day Flemings are cut out of the system. The result is far fewer new medicines coming to market. We want to fix this by ensuring the pharma industry builds a more integrated supply chain. We also believe that doctors' expertise administering medicine should be included at the beginning of the process. We know that doctors on the front line have insights about how to repurpose medicine. Doctors should be able to report their findings so that the necessary testing can be completed and they can share their results worldwide. Learn more here and help us take medicines back to the future.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Welcome to the Protagonists in the World Today. Nice to have your company too. We'll be talking about some very sensitive prime ministers. Stop putting ladies' bodies on me. It opens up all sorts of conversations, just that very statement. Now, the Australian government, under Anthony Albanese, apparently aspires to lead the world in online censorship. He has a lot of competition. Albanese proudly introduced the world's first under 16 ban on social media, which Meta, a greatest censor, has since denigrated. I'm just going to kill someone's microphone for a second. In Australia, verification will soon be required for internet searches, removing all anonymity and privacy. Albanese is also cooperating with his counterpart in the UK to possibly ban X, after Grok was found to have been generating non-consensual images of undressed women with Keir Starmer's head. He looked delightful. Following the Bondi tragedy, the government will introduce the Combatting Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill 2026, which will criminalise speech that merely causes fear, even if no harm occurs, with the prospect of 5 years in prison, and longer if Prime Minister Albanese has a terrible figure, that, bulging things. Keir Starmer insists free speech is protected in his realm, but Britain holds the record for the most arrests for social media posts, far higher than dictator-led Russia. According to an April 2025 Freedom of Information report filed by The Times, over 12,000 people, very bad people too, were arrested for social media posts. And that was in 2023. Just imagine if a Grok was flying then. The report found that a number of annual arrests had been more than doubled since 2017. And still in the UK, ever popular and always loved OFCOM is set to receive powers under the Online Safety Act to scan encrypted chats using so-called client-side scanning. That's where messages are checked on users' devices before encryption. So they're already in your phone. How exciting. Many of these measures purport to protect children and victims of religious and other serious crimes, but these measures are not fit for purpose. They don't pass the pub test. If somebody did that to you in a pub, you'd get a Glasgow kiss in 5 seconds. But the government, well, it's just doing what it likes. Is increasing censorship and surveillance of everyday consumers simply a power grab by politicians? Or does this indicate a deeper concern about growing social unrest? Is this an admission that they have lost control of law and order, so we must all be guilty until proven innocent? Or do our leaders simply need lessons on the principles of liberty and the benefits to society and how to govern in democracies? Our panel today is very, very good to say the least. David Atherton, political commentator and journalist. John Singleton, as I push the next button, and there we are. We're going all over the place here, having fun. Also, we have John Shipton, father of Julian Assange, and Alex Creel, founder of Thinking Coalition. Gentlemen, and I use that word lovingly, do you think government has gone far overboard at the moment? David Atherton, we'll start with you. I mean, because you're a fan of government, not. But
the bigger the better.
Could you imagine, though, if Monty Python in its throes of stardom, or you had Benny Hill or other Kenny Everett, they would be rolling in their graves if they knew what was happening. Because this is what I mean, to be offended if your head's stuck on a body of a woman. So what?
Well, indeed, yeah. I can understand why people get offended, but very, very, very little offends me. No, I would suggest rather than being Monty Python or anything like that, it's more a case of reading George Orwell's 1984 and use as a blueprint how to run the country. I look upon Britain as being in a post-democratic society. I think we live under genuinely tyrannical times. And by the way, one of the 12,600 arrests in 2024 was me. I was taken in for an ex-post meme by the Metropolitan Police, and what it said was F Palestine, F Hamas, and F Islam, and they wanted to do me for hate speech under the 1986 Communications Act. Quick word of advice: don't comment the interview. Get yourself a lawyer and join the free speech union. In the end, it was no further action, but I was a victim of the Online Safety Act. Basically, the reason behind it is before Elon Musk took over X, most of the platforms, Facebook and when it was under Jack Dorsey, Instagram, etc., Meta, the Meta organization, they were very compliant with government requests for censoring people, banning people, and what have we. And since Elon Musk took over X, he really has genuinely allowed 99% of the platform to be free speech. And also with the election of Donald Trump again a year ago, he's a lot more committed to free speech himself. And I think even Google and Meta and Mark Zuckerberg, isn't it, have actually they've said that they went too far and are allowed a little bit more free speech. But the free speech capital is Elon Musk's X.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I do think it's looking. I mean, I make light of this, but I think the future is not looking so bright. In fact, in Australia, and John Shipton will be very aware of this, in Australia next week, Anthony Albanese has removed his bikini attire, left the beach, probably wearing something very, very staid for a Prime Minister, although I did like his bikini. It looked very nice indeed. But he has called back Parliament, and all these terrible laws are going to be brought into being in the space of 2 days because, for example, with the anti-Semitic bill, whatever it's called, that's going to be rushed through the House. both lower house and through the Senate in the space of 2 days, because the opposition also thinks we should have such censorship and such brand new laws to really terrorise just about anyone for making any sort of comment. John, you were at the forefront of having your son released for having a voice, for telling the truth. Doesn't this smack in hypocrisy what is happening at the moment, not only in the UK, but also in Australia, that Albanese, through wanting to make multiculturalism really strong, is going to sacrifice free speech for that very, very desire?
Yeah, I understand the question really well, and I think hypocrisy is the least of their crimes. Really, they're interested in controlling the conversation within the society. This must stem from deep anxieties within the state and within the state's advisors that social media can alter the way the entire nation thinks about a subject, or thinks about a series of subjects or policies, or in fact cultivates enough momentum to alter policies and contradict state agendas. So we would conclude from that the social media is a double-edged sword. Now, for example, in Iran, they took over 40,000 Starlink terminals were smuggled into the country, and the attempt by the United States and Israel to overturn the government through the use of social media exemplifies for us how vulnerable we are to the conversations on social media, one way or the other, for the good or the bad. But in the case of a state, its principal concern are its stability and its power and the capacity to allocate that power where it wishes. And this is in competition, one way or the other, for the good or the bad, with social media. So the state will move to restrict our capacity to speak frankly with each other. I think it's a disaster myself.
Alex Creel, what's your thoughts? I mean, I think, I can't believe that the speed, for example, in Australia, that they're moving towards making it a safer and much more homogenised and scarier society. And in the UK, the same thing. It has just gone nuts, hasn't it?
Yeah, I agree completely with John there that if you look at Keir Starmer before he became Prime Minister, he was writing in the Fabian Society that, tackling misinformation, disinformation is going to be a big priority for him. And really what misinformation and disinformation means are opinions that conflict with the prevailing narrative produced by the state. There's really very little sort of scientific definition in misinformation or disinformation, and he made it clear that he was going to target those things. And I think you've seen over the course of the last 4 or 5 years more and more draconian legislation, Online Safety Act, the misuse of sanctions, the misuse of the Terrorism Act. All of those things are designed to attack people's free speech. And you also have created a whole infrastructure of NGOs also cooperating with big tech on taking people down. And I think Dave was saying that is much better now under X, but that infrastructure still exists, and you have these Institute for Strategic Dialogue and others who also are, as NGOs, identifying what they call misinformation and encouraging platforms to take that down. So yeah, this whole process continues, and I agree with you as well that this whole protecting children to a large extent can be used as a smokescreen to remove dissent, which is what's happening to many of us on Substack now. Parts of our work are classified as pornography, and to actually access that content, you have to go through age verification. But that's not an application of the law. That's the way Substack has decided to classify our material. But again, it's just an excuse to censor people and hide behind the Online Safety Act.
Yeah, I find this whole thing, X is always going to be involved in some sort of stoush because of Elon Musk and his, inverted commas, his desire to have free speech. But David, X is not a great friend of free speech unless you're a friend of Elon Musk or unless you're on the same page. This freedom of speech stuff that X goes on about, if it's not in the same sort of hovering around Elon Musk's thought pattern, which is very scary because you're very high then heading towards Uranus, or Mars anyway. I'm just thinking though, the X. It's interesting that X is who we're for free speech, but we're not really for free speech. I mean, we're at tier 1. The next one is to jump into a volcano, which we did receive the air tickets to parachute into a volcano. So so it really doesn't give much of credence to free speech. And then you have the UK government that but there's this I'm sure if you mention it or show it, you'll be jailed forever. That one with Keir Starmer saying, "Of course we have free speech in this country, and if you say otherwise, we'll jail you." So we have the two evils, both wanting to temper free speech, and it's sort of like cannibals eating cannibals.
Sure. Mike, I need to ask you, what kind of restrictions on free speech do you think X impose that are unacceptable?
Okay. I'll give you
very, 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 very quickly. I don't want to see abusive images of youngsters anyway, but
you shouldn't do that. But I mean, just we are regarded, we're regarded as and with TNT, we were regarded as an extremist organisation because we had both sides on. So either side didn't like what we were saying at one stage or another. And so therefore, for example, if we said we didn't like we didn't like what happened on October 7, we didn't. We did not like that at all, or 6, sorry. So we didn't like that. And we said that you shouldn't kill innocent people, and you shouldn't. Either side shouldn't kill innocent people. So we had this massive hate towards what TNT was doing. We got through that. But our numbers were, at one stage, 13,200. That was about, I think, November 2023. And when we stopped, it was 13,200. In that, over the space of 15 months or 16 months, we got no one. And we knew that we'd been shadow banned, blacklisted, all sorts of things. So what we want to get out, if we want to send a notification that we're interviewing the Pope tomorrow, who's doing pole dancing as one of his new skills, but nobody will ever know that. Sure. And so therefore, when he says, they say you'll be heard, but now you can have your say, but nobody's going to hear you. That's just pure censorship. So, and then if you look at the ones that get that push along, the ones that get paid for it, good for their business because advertisers and people who want to sell the product, they surround that. That's good economics. Okay. But to say it's free speech, I mean, it's just like YouTube saying you can do what you like, but don't breach our boundaries. But at the same time, those boundaries always change. Depending on whether Israel don't want you to do something, then they will push that. And so therefore, you're a bad person. You've broken all of our rules and regulations, and we've given you 3 strikes in 1, so you can go to God. So all those sort of things. But when it comes to Elon fighting for free speech, truly, it's like a cannibal fighting for the rights of vegetarians.
Sure. Well, Mike, I know, is that deliberately meant to provoke me? Anyway, for the record, Elon Musk follows me on X.
Well, we had his dad on. We used to have his father on every week. I thought I've got to get some sort of goodness here from Elon. You know what it did for us? No Christmas cards, no nothing.
Sure. I write a lot about grooming gangs and lots of controversial subjects. And there was one where there was one thing I quoted verbatim, word for word, which I cut and paste from Hansard, which is a record of parliamentary speeches about a girl who was very, very badly abused. It's absolutely horrific. It was torture. It wasn't rape. It was torture. I've yet to have any of my ex posts in the last year told to delete them. I've been temporarily or permanently suspended. That has not happened to me at all. And I'm a very, very controversial writer. And, I'm often being critical of Islam on X. I'm always drawing attention to the grooming gangs and what happened to them. And I'm also very, very rude about all the main political parties. So I from my perspective, I really generally haven't seen anything that go awry. And also as well, the other thing, when I've reported stuff which I haven't liked, no action has ever been taken. If I found something particularly, these were not child abuse pictures. This sort of people being entirely anti-Semitic and calling for the gassing of Jews and things like that. I've reported them, and X has done nothing about it. So no platform is perfect, but as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not blowing smoke up Elon Musk's backside, but I think X is as near as to free speech that we can have in a social media platform. Sorry. Yeah.
I don't agree. I think it's either free speech or it's not. I mean, you can't have, well, I don't like that, so we're not going to have that talked about. It's either free speech or it's not.
Where's your line? If we talk, for example, if we talk about little green men from Mars, that they're all rapists.
They very well could be.
Well, what you can say is
prove otherwise.
Little green men, are overrepresented in rape statistics or crime statistics. Let's not pick on any particular group at the moment. And also but I think that probably would be seen to be racist if you tar them all with the same brush and incitement to hatred. Also if you move on to the all little green men are nasty pieces of work, and we should get rid of the whole lot of them. Incitement to violence and killing, that is unacceptable as well. I think you should be able to say we should robustly defend our rights against these people, using reasonable force. I think that's okay. But I think there is a line even for me at incitement to hatred and incitement to violence.
I'm just wondering, somebody just wrote in, and it just goes to prove what I was saying is right. Your issues, David, I'll get to you in a second, John, if you don't mind, but your issues, David, are Elon's issues. And they're very good issues, by the way. I have no problem at all with those.
Yeah, sure.
But if you're not, if our issues, I mean, this is where the odd thing was, I asked Grok, that terrible, evil thing that he created.
Oh, Grok's brilliant.
It's great. I love it. He told us how, he said that you are a tier one. You're the next stage into that volcano. Yeah. And it is what it is. I mean, here's the thing. I don't have to use it if I don't want to. So take all that aside. It's his business, but it's not a free speech. It's a selected free speech platform. And that's what it is. But I mean, and the issues of Elon, I agree with many of those. But, to say free speech is for one and all, it is not. It is, and that's where it's unfair. But looking at your government, I just want to ask you before we get into John, tell me about this, the Online Safety Act using client-side scanning. I mean, what I believe it's sort of like, that is spyware. Isn't that that is a gross invasion of privacy? I thought that would have been knocked on the head before it got too far down the track.
Sure, absolutely. Well, also as well, the Labour government want to introduce digital ID as well, which should it's been compared to the Chinese social credit system. So this comes out of his playbook of controlling the population, restricting their rights, and telling them what to do, and you can't say a bad word about me. One of the things I like about Axe is that Keir Starmer has been community noted 21 times. His manifesto in 2024 was a tissue of lies, and he's been caught out time and time again telling lies. He has no right to turn around and talk about misinformation and disinformation. He is the biggest barefaced liar in Britain or in the political field. But and because on social media and particularly on X, he's being called out on it. This is the reason he wants to take control of it. The Online Safety Act has been weaponised by the Labour Party, basically to shut down X. They're going to hand out massive fines. Elon Musk is going to turn around and say, "I'm not paying them." That's just the excuse they need to completely ban X from British waters. And lucky I've got a VPN, so I'll always be okay on something like that. But most other people wouldn't be bothered. And there, in one fell swoop, the Labour Party has got rid of a massive source of criticism.
John, in Australia, we used to have government and opposition. For example, in cricket, we have Australia cricket side and Australia A, but still playing for the same side. Is that what's happened to Australia in politics? That we have the government, and then we have the second 11 sitting out there, but they all are painted and tarred with the same brush. Because if you look at our free speech and what's happening to it, and everyone goes on about free speech, it's a common term, and sometimes it's misinterpreted. But I always thought that free speech, John, was that you can say just about anything, if not anything. If it's slander, you'll get sued. If it's libel, you'll get sued, and that'll be dealt with in the courts. But if you say hurty words, or you say that I don't like the government of Israel, I don't like the sort of bikini that Albanese is wearing, I should be able to say that. And to have the government rushing these bills through, the Combatting Antisemitism, Hate and Extremism Bill 2026, and when Albanese was asked about the radical Islamist or radical Islam, he swung it straight away over to the Nazis. And somebody kept pushing it, and he wouldn't answer that question about. So I'm just wondering, if we haven't got government that looks after its people, and we haven't got an opposition that opposes government on what it's doing, what's the future looking like for us in Australia?
Well, it sort of looks difficult. However, all of these Western states are feeble and bordering on pathetic in their administration of their populations. In the case of Australia, we seem to be moving in concert with the UK towards a varying sorts of oppression of what you can say and you can't say. We used to speak to each other quite frankly and be very proud of it. And if you took unnecessary offence at what people were saying, you were considered an excessive. That's an excessive response, just and it was always sticks and stones will break my bones, but names can never hurt. Well, that certainly has changed. And now both sides of Parliament are instructed by their advisors in the secret services and other aspects of advice that the government gets, that we are vulnerable to the opinions of opinion makers who don't have government imprimatur. So you have men like Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson or several others, I shouldn't mention names, but independent operators in the United States or broadcasting into the United States very effectively, having a greater voice than most of the traditional distribution of legacy media. We understand that a massive change has taken place, which has brought about disruption and anxiety within the states, within a state's policies, and how to order things, that the stability that they once imagined they felt returns, particularly as we understand that they're feeble. You can't imagine a more feeble government that still continues to govern effectively than Australia or France can't govern. And the United States itself, with its wonderful First Amendment, and its flourishing alternate media. I rarely look at X because there's just so much online stuff to read emanating from the United States, with just fabulous insights into how the world is transposing into multiculturalism. I think the problems that we ought to address are outside the framework of what the government directs us to attend to. So, for example, Indonesia has joined BRICS as a full partner. Indonesia has 147 kilometres of high-speed rail. We still have no internet connection and no phone recharge possibilities on train travel between Sydney and Melbourne. So they're the things we ought to be attending to. The Indian Ocean is the strategic lines of communication for the Horn of Africa, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, India, China, Thailand, Australia, Malaysia, and Japan and South Korea. I mean, the vitality of that strategic line of communication sitting on Western Australia means that Western Australia is the most strategic portion of Australia. They're the things that we ought to attend to, rather than this distraction put up by the government of introducing ridiculous hate speech. I'll give you a further example which is really compelling. They, in the Adelaide Writers' Festival, they censored a particular author, and 180 other authors said, "Oh no, we're not putting up with that, we're leaving, we're not coming to the festival." The board, members of the board resigned, and the entire festival has been cancelled through this rather clumsy act of censoring somebody who may have said something that might have offended somebody. So the fight back has started.
Yeah, I have to say, and I agree, I read that story, and it was, I think, a Palestinian writer, and she is highly critical of Israel. But it was interesting, the first person to take its stance was Louise Adler. And you would think she would, unless you know the person, you would think that she'd probably be the last person to take the, but she is very, very much on the side of Israel in many cases. But she stood up and she said everybody has a right of free speech, and to start censoring, which is subjective, isn't it? And when you start subjecting your own opinion onto free speech, Alex, what's your thoughts on that? If you start subjecting your opinion onto free speech, such as what Elon Musk does, and he does do it, because we are a victim of Elon, got to work out how to get him to like us. I've got no idea. Had his dad on, as I said, and he didn't do us any good at all. So free speech is exactly that, isn't it? It's having a right to say something. And if it's a bit hurty or you don't like it, we need to take a big tablet of adult tablets, big ones to make us act like mature people and not go running to the government or to an adjudicator or someone to say, yes, you've said bad things and we're going to knock you on the head. You have got no right now to say anything, and in fact we might throw you in jail. And that very thing is happening in the UK.
Yeah, I think you're right. The misinformation is not just hurty words, but it's actually anything that goes against the government position. So you've seen that. Obviously, the big tell on that was the whole vaccine story. So anybody that questioned efficacy or safety would be punished under the sort of old system, and that happened to all of us. Of course, with shadow banning, I had my own YouTube channel shut down, and everything we said about lack of efficacy and about safety turned out to be true. But, at the time, saying that was considered misinformation because it clashed with the government's position at any one time. So, as well as hurty words, you've got anything that clashes with the agenda. And you're right, you're just opposing other people's opinions on you. That's ultimately what it's all about. Only one opinion is allowed. I also agree with you on X that, as well as limiting reach, I think he's been quite open. You can say whatever you like. You have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom of reach, and it's kind of a joke. But that is a way of censoring people, is to, tweak the algorithm so that your stuff does not end up in the feed, and therefore, as you said, your number of subscribers or followers will be absolutely fixed throughout all time. And the other thing with X in particular is you have an absolutely enormous volume of fake bot traffic on that platform. And rather than censoring voices they don't like, what they actually do is amplify voices that they do like. And actually, the left also is quite big into setting up these bot operations, which I've written about, and they can out of thin air magic out 20,000 likes from these bots operations. So certain left wing figures will always be in your feed because they've been amplified so much. So there's many different ways to filter out things that people don't like, through reach, or being drowned by fake traffic, or all of this legislation that you're talking about, misinformation and disinformation. And you're right, it's just things they don't like. There's nothing more sinister or scientific about the things that they shut down. They just don't like them for whatever reason.
And John mentioned before, Alex, that the alt or independent media is his preferred viewing or choice, which is great, because I think there's some magnificent broadcasters out there. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Same thing with Legacy. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Or they do cover stories that are pretty mundane, unless it's, and if you're in that town, it's sometimes nice to know that you can't really twist a story about a goat running amok in the front yard, especially if it's your front yard eating your grass or roses. So, but generally, legacy media is up against the wall. We all say this, but it is because of independent media. But the same warning from, and I think that the problem with independent media or alt media is that sometimes they pretend to be something they're not. But again, though, once you realise that, you don't have to watch it or read their blogs or whatever, you can just move on. And that's part of the whole thing. We should have a choice whether we want to hear something, see something. If we don't like it, we move on. Your government, Alex, is, I would have to say, absolutely appalling. It's doing everything it can to destroy all that made the UK famous, especially when it came down to free speech. What do you do about it?
Well, that's a very difficult question. I mean, I think you have these pushback organizations now, like the Free Speech Union. So they, I mean, I think it's not perfect. I can quibble about things that they do, but they actually have done a lot to push back against people who have been deplatformed. So you have to create these grassroots, sort of bottom-up organizations outside of the system and push back against it. That's more or less all you can do. I mean, a lot of people are talking about setting up alternative platforms. So a lot of people have been have faced this age verification on Substack, and their immediate response is, "Okay, I'm leaving. We'll set something else up." But actually, these are unfortunately quite capital intensive operations to set up. So 10 unhappy Substack authors are not going to be able to set up another Substack quite easily. So the scope for setting up alternative electronic platforms is a bit limited, but eventually we're going to have to find workarounds like around all of these things. And where there's a will, there's a way. And I think Dave mentioned VPNs, for example. So the more they come and oppress people over certain issues, the more people will find imaginative ways around them. For example, VPNs. I don't know what we're going to do with electronic platforms, whether, we migrate from Substack going back to just email lists or whatever, but there has to be a way around all of these systems, and I think we'll have to find out those things as we go along. I don't think there's a grand plan, but yeah, there'll always be a way to work around it.
And we, when I was in fact, John, when we were in London, we're covering the second last. They were appealing the right to appeal. And we actually covered it. We were there doing it live with some great presenters, and we had cameras all over the place. And so we did all that. But I was just thinking, though, David, how do we? Because it's very, very hard to keep moving to different platforms to have that free speech. And what people don't realise, that whether it's a VPN or another platform, you want to just log onto it and off you go, they're always under the control or under the laws of each particular country. So I wonder about VPNs, and I know in Australia, and I'll ask John to comment on that shortly, they're talking about banning VPNs because their e-safety law is not working. I mean, kids, we'll just get our mum and dad. 85% I think of parents in Australia have helped their kids get around this new e-safety law, which is just ridiculous. It means it never was meant to work in the first place. But just talking about what's happening with moving from platform to platform, if the UK government, David, control VPNs, which if you have a VPN and it's operating in a particular territory, you actually have to abide by that particular country's laws and rules and stuff. If we go down one step further from what Alex was saying, and that they can stop, they can just stop you, or you got to verify who you are, and every time you do that, use biometrics to log in and so forth. Can you see the day that we'll end up going back to, remember Netflix before they became Netflix? They used to have CDs or DVDs, and they would post those to you, and then when you finished, you'd send them back in a package. That's one way of getting it, even though it's a bit late. Generally, if you get it within 1 or 2 days, it's still pretty good. You could pile your information onto a DVD. Therefore, you haven't got to log in and show the people who you are. No biometrics, no sort of verification is required, except you send that particular company the $10 or whatever it is to get that particular DVD. Do you think we're going to head down that way? I heard that. And I don't know how right this is, that UK column might be going into a magazine. I don't know if they are or not. But that would, to me, indicate a way of getting around verification and biometric security.
Yeah, well, then we say necessity is the motherhood of invention kind of thing. And by the way, I was reading the other day. Apparently, the safest way to communicate these days, if you don't want the state to intrude upon you, is have a landline call with somebody. Just the old-fashioned telephone in the hallway. We go phone your mate up on that sort of thing. I think ultimately the government will be fighting a losing battle. At the next general election, Labour will be absolutely decimated. They've got about 400 seats at the moment, and they're going to be down to about 50, if that. So, what I think in the medium term, longer term, looking at this, yes, we can go back to your CDs. Yes, you can go back to your landline phones, but I think what really I'm disgusted that the Liberal Party in Australia is supporting Albanese. That's disgusting. I'm sorry, they are there as an opposition for a reason. But anyway, that's by the by. But no, I'm actually relatively hopeful for the future because reform in this country are seen to be should get a reasonable working majority. I know one of the things that they're going to be pushing for is a brand new Free Speech Act, which overrides the 1689 or complements, I should say, 1689 Bill of Rights. But yeah, I think we're very much in the trenches. We're very much on the back foot, and we've got to look for new technology, new ideas, how to display what we're doing and showcase what we're doing. But I still think the key to all this is being able to communicate with each other and the ability to share ideas. I think possibly maybe WhatsApp even might have a broad role to play in this longer term. I think you can probably get literally hundreds of users on it these days. I think where we're heading at the moment is the short term is absolutely oppressive and dictatorial and tyrannical. But I think the long term, I think we will win because we have the better ideas and we can see them, we can see you, and I think the only thing we will win in the end. That I'm quite confident about.
John, the e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, which I'm sure she's you got pictures of her with elbow all over the wall with pellet shots in it. Sorry, I shouldn't say that at all. I'll be arrested in no time. But that's what the 12 gauge always came in handy. But I'm just thinking though, the e-safety, which was meant to protect children, and I think it was Channel 7 that ran the story, which I was surprised, being a Murdoch mob, that Channel 7 said there's something like 85 or 87% of parents help their children get around the biometrics and all the verification. That itself would say that it doesn't work and never was meant to work. What do you think the real reason of Albanese, supported by the federal opposition, who said, the Shadow Communications Minister said once, 2 months ago, said that government needs to control the internet. And she's fighting for our freedoms, which we've got no hope at all. Right, come on, Pauline Hanson, maybe. But I'm just thinking, what's a real reason, do you think, of the e-safety act, of the verifications and proving how old you are?
Just to give the government the capacity to control in the majority what we think and feel about their actions. I mean, there are, some of it, like protecting children, we understand, that this is a lever to get our acceptance of a policy. So we understand that. That's pretty clear. Protecting children, is a duty of parents and the larger society, not really a government's job. The other aspect of it is that it clearly indicates that Mr. Albanese and his advisors on both sides of government consider control of what we think and our conversations really, really important. So the question is, why do they consider it? Is it the natural impulse of bureaucratic power to increase itself everlastingly, finding little corners where there could be problems in the future and fixing them up with some more legislation, which in the cases you just illustrated is impossible to successfully administer, indicating a certain clumsiness or idiocy in institutions of government? Most unsurprising thing, if you forgive my satire. we march on to, are there any genuine reasons to get the government to involve itself in what we hear and what we converse to each other over social media and alternate media? Are there any genuine reasons why the government should involve itself? Are we inclined as a species to become nervous and riot if we consider two principal things: corruption in government or unfair distribution of resources, which seem to be the great stimulators of discontent, and they're constantly used in colour regime change, the latest one being in Iran, where 40,000 Starlink terminals were smuggled in, and as a consequence, the Iranian government, understanding that the communications with what we might call activists or troublemakers were communications amongst them were essential for the organisation of their regime change, so that the Iranian government got from Russia and Chinese a means to disturb Starlink and disturb the distribution of information from Mossad and the CIA over the 40,000 Starlink terminals. So this gives us considerable insight into the powers that social media and digital distribution of information has. We, as a consequence, think seriously about what the government ought to do and can do. Now, myself, I would break up X into competing smaller units so that they don't have such power. And I would break up Facebook and I would break up Google because I think they're monsters. Also, in the case of my beloved Australia, I would introduce our own social media as a consequence that, and our, for example, Alex said about Substack requiring bio confirmation. Well, why not have a Substack Ozstack here? All of the necessary programs and coding are available. They've got 40 years experience in producing this coding, so it's no problem to do. So that would be my preference. Increase the number of voices rather than the American policy of having gigantically powerful X, Google, Apple, and Meta to direct the public's attention this way and that, as Peter, what's his name, Peter Thiel's company analyzes the data and points out the way we are thinking and the direction we're going.
Pretty scary if you're an Aussie, how we are thinking. Sometimes it's been muddied with a couple of good beers. Alex, I just want to get your thoughts on, and the point that John made is on the surface it seems quite realistic. However, if you're in a country such as, probably Australia, for example, or the UK, or in England, and you have this law that says you have to, all the providers have got to ensure that people log in. And if you don't log in, you'll get a whopping fine, as they threaten X and all those in Australia. So that same law would also affect those setting up an Ozstack, for example, or something like that. They're still got to adhere to government rules and regulations, but you have to then surrender that information over to the government. So I don't know if that would work. Can you see it working in the UK? People setting up their own, and you're right, the cost of it is enormous. because you need a lot of data or storage facilities. You need to make sure you got the right programs in place, securities, it goes on and on and on. So I don't know whether it's commercially viable, and at the same time, I don't know whether places that put these restrictions on you, such as Substack, have a long-term future, because people who want the anonymity and the security and peace of mind will just stop using them.
Yeah, I mean, on Substack, we have a letter now out to the CEO asking him why they are imposing these age verification requirements, because they're not required by the Online Safety Act. The Online Safety Act only requires age verification if you're going to access harmful content. And the real sneaky trick Substack has done is classify our material and at least 10 other writers that I know of as harmful. And that's their internal classification that's totally unjustified. And then they've applied the Online Safety Act on top of that. So we're challenging them at the moment about why they've done that. And I agree with you. I don't understand their business model. Their business model is to give independent writers, a platform to speak on. And now, if they're going to start harassing all of the independent writers, now, as far as I know, there's 7 or 8 accounts much bigger than ours who have also faced this. Now, if those guys, one way or another, leave, then they're shooting themselves in the foot with the business model. So I'm not really quite sure what they're doing. And when we get an answer back, we'll maybe know more if we get an answer back. But you're right, it's confusing, and I think the dissident writers, I just don't think they have the competence. I certainly don't, to set up an alternative platform. And as you said, it's always anyway going to be a cat and mouse game, because even if you do set up a new platform, then yeah, you're right, there'll be new legislation in 4 or 5 or 3 years down the road trying to close that down as well. So it'll be an endless cat and mouse game with many iterations, including compulsory verification of identity before getting on the internet. That's the ultimate sort of way of shutting all of that down, basically.
Wrapping up to all three, and we'll start up with David, because I'm keen to hear what he has to say. But is the internet used as the town square, the village square, for expressing, you want to say something, you can say it, and if you're with X, no one's going to hear you unless Elon loves you.
Well, not at the moment. My prejudices are well down at the moment, but carry on.
No, he'll look after you. But I'm just thinking, though, is the internet as a town square or village square, and a way of communicating between you and I, or anybody for that matter, is it coming to an end for that particular purpose?
Again, I'm going to say short term, maybe long term, no. I think in 1984, all had Big Brother, and Big Brother is watching you. I think with the internet, we're watching Big Brother. So that's a thing they object to most of all. The very fact that we can fact check them, we can argue with them, we have in a sense direct access to them, and they can be scrutinised day in, day out. I should imagine if you go back to the pre-internet days, the only place you could get information from really was newspapers and also the TV as well. And before that, we go back to the 17th century and the pamphlets. And not everyone could read and write and were literate in those days. But yeah, I still remain optimistic. In Britain, there is this pent-up rage at the way the government is going about things, and let me not just have a bash at the Labour Party. It was actually it was the Conservative Party. You can see the Online Safety Act, and they just about got rid of the legal but harmful clause in the Act as well. So what you said was completely legal, but because it's viewed to be harmful by a snowflake, that's gonna get you banned. I also as well, the other X factor here as well, pardon the pun, is I think Donald Trump is just about to go ballistic, as I mentioned. He's going to be really, really angry. There's a really great American lawyer called Preston Byrne who's busily suing Ofcom over in Washington DC on behalf of 4chan and Kiwi Farms. It's an open and shut case as far as I'm concerned. He's going to win, and apparently the American government can then penalise the British government as well. And also the kind of things that Donald Trump can do is, he can. 15% of the UK's GDP comes from the City of London and the investment banking market there. He could theoretically shut that down overnight, that we can't trade in the dollar, that we can't settle trades between Wall Street and the City of London and Docklands. There are so many things Donald Trump I think will be prepared to do. I think Starmer will have to back down. And I also I think longer term, I think Ofcom will be closed down. I think the Online Safety Act will be repealed. But unfortunately, we've got to be patient and take it on the chin in the meantime.
I'm not so enthusiastic as you are, but we do have hope. Not much. John Shipton, do you see us? The village square, the town square, which the internet has been a great way for everybody to communicate instead of being in that little village or globally. But it is under threat at the moment. And do you see that it's going to be a thing of just memories, or do you think it'll get through these turbulent times, these buffheads who call themselves politicians, and get through it, and we will end up still having that village or town square, or do you see it gone?
Well, I mean, that's what I use it for, forums where people contribute to information and improve their understanding by other contributions. That's what I use it for. And I find it in that regard still dynamic and helpful. In the case of the UK, I imagine that the UK will no longer exist, and that Scotland will make its way hither and yon. And that's one of the reasons why the state of the UK is in considerable anxiety about the realisations of its population, that the administration, since the financialisation has been catastrophic to ordinary people and greatly beneficial to a few. We understand that. We're dissatisfied with that. We loathe the government for doing that. And this causes the state to become repressive. They understand that they are in error and that they have no way of correcting their errors. They limit the information that flows through them because they utilise it's about 600-year-old tool of administration called cabinet government, which is no longer appropriate. That's the culture of the United Kingdom. The culture of the United States is very, very different. Working in the United States, you understand that when a baby is born, it breathes in and out the privilege of the First Amendment, free speech. That's in their makeup, so that the government has considerable difficulty in applying repressive measurements. As far as Mr. Trump and his administration is concerned, the only parallel that I can make is that he's gone supernova. It's expanding so fast, rather like a supernova, that it's in the end stage of a certain form of existence. So I imagine that that requires from the United States some control over the understanding of its people. How they get it is by performance. So their culture has within it victory and exuberance. Put those two together with performance, and you have Mr. Trump's technique of administration. In Australia, we had a consensual parliament. It's not like Abbott and Gillard's time. Mr. Abbott opposed everything. We now have a consensual single party with a couple of outer wings, the Conservatives at one end and the left wing at the other. That's the circumstances in Australia, and they agree on a few things. One is that it's essential, absolutely essential to the continuance of Australia to fulfil the requirements of the United States and its strategies for its continued existence. We cannot embark upon sovereignty. And so every effort must be made to ensure that TNT, for example, are limited in their effects. Another point I'd like to make is that the frictions that TNT makes, or activism like I involved myself in for many years, the frictions are helpful to government. They're not a hindrance. And government can make their adjustments to their policies or to the way the policies are enacted by watching TNT and understanding the drift of the ideology of TNT or watching what we protest over. So it's clear from what happened in Adelaide and what happened in Bendigo a little before that, that there is a potential within Australian polity to move away from the policies that the government enacts to protect itself within the United States umbrella. We don't want it. We want a fairer and more open approach, and particularly to sovereignty. This makes the government anxious, and so they enact policy. They'll be watching this program, and they'll read the number of people that listen, and they'll read the effect upon the number of people listening by looking at the social media commentary. I remember working in the United States, going to a couple of rallies to watch Mr. Trump's style. There'd be 45,000 people there. 5,000 of them would have their phones out, relaying little bits here and there onto the carousel of the internet of social media. These things are best understood rather than arguing within a framework that the government causes us to look at by its policies. They want us to discuss this, and so we do. But understand that your stuff is monitored, and its distribution is analysed and counted.
Well, interesting. Because TNT, we now have the World Today, which is TWT. Who's being a bit naughty? I am.
Oh, sorry, TWT.
No, that's okay.
Sorry.
No, I had good warm fuzzies then. I was thinking of the days when there was just turmoil. But it has changed. But you are right. Trump his administration is doing, I think, some goodish things. But Alex, you would just to counter what John said there about Trump. Pam Bondi just recently said that they have to control hate speech, and here we go again. And surely that would have a massive conflict of interest with the First Amendment. However, knowing Donald Trump, and it could have your troops fighting the US again, a few hundred years later, but this time in Greenland, who knows? But it's I don't think Donald Trump is immune to protecting the global community when it comes to speech. However, I do think that the internet is under a massive attack. And I think my own opinion is that it will get worse before it gets better, if it does get better. Do you see, Alex, it's not the end of the internet, but it's the end of using it as a free speech platform, or the town square, or an avenue of sharing information that some may not want to hear, but that's the essence of free speech.
Yeah, I think it'll continue, and but I think you have to be more sophisticated in understanding how it's working. So, like I said, we did a lot of work on bots, and you begin to realize the things that are most popular can be completely fake, and the things that are genuine could be buried because they don't have the bot amplification. But for me, the real thing of the internet is not so much the opinions in there, but it's seeing that the government is essentially almost always doing things that are unpopular. And I think it's because the government's driven by vested interests, and those vested interests are often opposed to what the people want. And that's why you're constantly seeing government people being ratioed or being community noted. And I think that's been a fantastic achievement of X to actually see those ratios. So, and that goes across all the parties. I don't think this is a one party is going to save us from the other party. I think all of those main parties are essentially controlled by vested interests, and therefore all of them end up getting ratioed when they do stuff people don't like. And I think that will continue, but you'll be more sophisticated on understanding what's genuinely popular, what's being hidden, and maybe using the social media more as a tool to get in contact with people. And I mean, that's what we've used it for. We try and talk offline as much as possible, and for that it's been very good. And I think, as I said, the rest of it with the amplification and the limiting of reach, then that becomes more unhelpful because it becomes more a tool of manipulation than exchanging information.
Alex, somebody wants to find out more about Thinking Coalition or yourself, or just, well, we can have a conversation with you online. How do they do that?
It's thinkingcoalition.org is the website, and there's quite a good, I would say, Substack. It's also Thinking Coalition, and at Think Coalition on Twitter, X.
David Atherton, friend of Elon Musk, apparently.
Allegedly.
Anyway, you've done it. Please put in a good word for it, for God's sake. But if somebody wants to read your writings, scribblings, how do they do that?
Everything revolves around my X account, Dave Atherton 20.
And is that supported by? It is supported by Elon. That's right. Does he send you a Christmas card?
No, he doesn't. No, yeah. He also hasn't reposted me for 2 or 3 months, which has ruined my figures.
That's terrible. you have a good figure. And John, a bit frivolous here, but if somebody wants to find out more about you or have a conversation with you, while we can, who knows what's going to happen next week after Parliament get together for that special sitting, which has already been determined what's going to happen. So it'll be finished in a day and a half, easy. But in the meantime, if they want to have a conversation with you or find out what you're doing or your thoughts, how do they do that?
JohnShipton.com.
That's pretty. That's it.
Yeah, that's
I'm
it.
just busy I'm just busy writing this all down. Yeah.
You'll be chatting to Dave in no time. David Atherton, political commentator and journalist and friend of Elon Musk. John Shipton, father of Julian Assange. And Alex Creel, founder of Thinking Coalition. Thank you very much for your time. We went a bit over, but I think it's well worth it, and the conversation is just brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. This, by the way, is The Protagonists, and this is The World Today.